Chapter 34. Lancaster town lies 35 miles journey to the west. What brought me here, Mason wrote in the field record, was my curiosity to see the place where was perpetrated last winter the horrid and inhuman murder of 26 Indians, men, women, and children, leaving none alive to tell. Me, notes Uncle Ives. My. Sounds like Mason went by himself. The Reverend nods. Dixon told me that Mason had meant to go alone, but that at the last moment, mindful of the dangers attending solitude in a town notorious for atrocity, he offered to add muscular emphasis, though Mason seemed unsure of whether he wanted him there or not. They, cross Susquehanna by Wright's Ferry, reaching Lancaster 10 January 1765, putting up at the Cross Keys. The public rooms are crowded with lawyers, town officials, justices, merchants and mill owners. The middling to better sort, not a murderously drooling backwoodsman in sight, unless they include their guide, picked up about a minute and a half inside the town limits, who may once or twice have undergone a loss of salivary control. Mason soon enough on about how quaint, how American, Dixon rather suspecting him of being in the pay of the Paxton boys, to keep an eye upon two hirelings of their landlord and enemy, Mr. Penn. Here for a look at the massacre site, are you, gentlemen? I can always tell. Some bring sketching books, some easels, others their specimen bags, but all converge through the same queer magnetism. I quite understand, though others about may not. 'Twould do to mind one's belongings, yet I must not bite the backs that ignore me. The first stop upon any tour is acknowledged to be the Dutch rifle, whither the boys, hushed be the name ever spoken, having left their horses at Mr. Slow's, repaired just before the doing of the deed. Step this way, pray ye's. When they see what is upon the tavern sign, Mason and Dixon exchange a look. The weapon depicted, black upon white, is notable for the device upon its stock, a silver star of 5 points, reversed so that 2 point up and 1 down. A sure sign of evil at work, universally recognized as the horns of the devil. No one would adorn a firearm with it, who was not wittingly in the service of that prince. This is not the first time the surveyors have seen it. At the Cape, usually right side up, it is known as the steerloop, a sort of good luck charm out in the bush. But every now and then, mostly on days of treacherous wind or ill spirits, one or both had spied upon a rifle an inverted star, much like what they observe now, against the sky, plumb in the windless forenoon. I told ye the last time that last time was the last time, JBs, comes a voice from a high angle. Mason and Dixon, peering upward, observe the landlord, whose pate appears to brush the beams above him in a vexed temper. "Ever a merry quip," cries Jabez, nimbly stepping behind the surveyors and propelling them ahead. They are examined sceptically. "Not from the press, are you?" "'Pon my word," cry both surveyors at once. "Drummers of some kind's my guess," puts in a countryman, his rifle at his side. "Am I right, gents?" "What'll we say?" mutters Mason urgently to Dixon. "Oh, do allow me," says Dixon to Mason, adverting to the room. "Why, aye, right as a right angle. We're out here to ruffle up some business with anyone who may be in need of surveying, London style, astronomically precise, optically up to the minute, surprisingly cheap. The behaviour of the stars is the most perfect motion there is, and we know how to read it all, just as you'd read a clock face. We have lenses that never lie, and micrometers fine enough to subtend the width of a hair upon a Martian's eyeball. This looks like a bustling town, plenty of activity in the land trades. Where think ye's 'ud be a good place to start?" with an amiability that Mason recognizes as peculiarly Quaker, friendly business. "Then why ye's asking Jabez 'bout the massacre?" inquires a toothless old coot with an empty can, which Dixon makes sure is promptly filled. "Ah, how do we know you're not just two more Philadelphia fops out skipping through the brushwood?" "He approached us," Mason protests. "We're men of science," Dixon explains, "this being a neoclassical instance of the catastrophic resolution of interpopulational cross-purposes. Of course, we're curious to see where it all happened." "You can't just come minuetting in from London and expect to understand what's going on here," advises Mr. Slough. "This is about family, sure as the history of England. Inside any one tribe of Indians, they're all related, see? Kill you one Delaware, you affront the family at large. Out here, if it's blood of mine, of course I must go out and seek redress, though I'll have far less company. Each alone, lacking the numbers, our sole recourse is to band together." "These were said to be harmless, helpless people," Dixon points out in some miraculous way that does not draw challenge or insult in return. Apprehensive among these folks, Mason, who would have perhaps used one adjective fewer, regards his Geordie partner with a strange gaze bordering upon respect. "They were blood relations of men who slew blood relations of ours," Jabez explains. "Then if you know who did it, for the Lord's sake, why did you not go after them?" "This hurt them more," smiles a certain oily Leon, fingering his frizzen and flint. "Aye, they go on living, but without dear old Grandam. Puts a big hole in the blanket, don't it?" "You must hate them exceedingly. Mason pretending a philosophical interest, actually far more faint than his interest in getting out of here alive. No, looking about as if puzzled. Not any more. That debt is paid. I'll live in peace with them. Happy to. Mayn't they now feel obliged to come after you? Asks Jerry disingenuous. He notices Mason just visibly creeping toward the door. Not this side of the river, nor this side of York and Baltimore Road. 'Tis all ours now. They answer to us here. What's the complaint? Demands oily Leon. We're out here as a picket for Philadelphia. We've cleared them a fine, safe patch, from Delaware to Susquehanna. Now may they prance about foolish as they may. Aye, pens, handing us and our children about like chattel. Damn like field slaves. Dared they ever leave England and come here, they should find harsher welcome than any king. Here's a riddle. If a cat may look at a king, may a Pennsylvanian take aim at a king's enforcer? Sir, the murmuring is about equally divided as to whether this is going too far or not far enough. Their cities allow them folly. A German of mystical toilette advises the astronomers. That daily living upon the frontier will not forgive. They feed one another's pretences, live upon borrowed money as borrowed time, their lives as their deaths, put, with all appearance of willingness, under the control of others mortal as they, rather than subject, as must country people's lives and deaths be, to the one eternal ruler. That is why we speak plainly, whilst cits learn to be roundabout as snakes. Our time is much more precious to us. What? Our time not precious? Guffaws a travelling sales representative. Why, you're welcome, cousin, to try and get through 24 hours of Philadelphia time, which, if it don't kill you, will cure you at least of your illusions about us. Excuse me, says Dixon. I meant to ask, what's that smoking object in thy mouth that thou keep puffing on? Not much tobacco where you boys are from. Down Chesapeake, why, they've nothing but endless acres. Glasgow shipping fender to fender in the bays. Why, taboo, hell, they use it for money. Smoke your week's pay. This form of it, sirs, what we call a cigar. They come in all sorts, this particular one being from Conestoga. The wagon bullies there style it a stogie. The secret's in the twist they put in the handful of leaves whilst they're squeezing it to shape. Sort of like putting rifling inside a barrel, only different. Gives the smoke a spin, as you'd say. Watch this. He sets his lips as for a conventional or toroidal smoke ring, but out instead comes a ring like a length of ribbon, closed in a circle, with a single twist in it, possessing thereby but one side and one edge. Uncle, pray ye, 'tis true, I was not there, yet such was the pure original stogie in its day. Though nothing much has been said, the surveyors are surprised to discover that everyone's been saying it for several hours. The only thing that has grown clearer is Jabez's motive in offering to be their guide. Soon lamps are lit and the supper crowd has come in, and Mason and Dixon, no closer to having seen the site of the massacre, heads are reel with smoke, return to their rooms. Does Britannia, when she sleeps, dream? Is America her dream, in which all that cannot pass in the metropolitan wakefulness is allowed expression away in the restless slumber of these provinces, and on westward, wherever 'tis not yet mapped, nor written down, nor ever by the majority of mankind seen, serving as a very rubbish tip for subjunctive hopes, for all that may yet be true. Earthly paradise, fountain of youth, realms of Prestigion, Christ's kingdom ever behind the sunset, safe till the next territory to the west be seen and recorded, measured and tied in back into the network of points already known, that slowly triangulates its way into the continent, changing all from subjunctive to declarative, reducing possibilities to simplicities that serve the ends of governments, winning away from the realm of the sacred its borderlands one by one, and assuming them unto the bare mortal world that is our home and our despair. Yet must the sensorium be nourished. Mason, insomniac, addresses himself in a sort of gastric speech he has devised for hours like these. As the body, with its own transcendent desires, the foremost being eternal youth, for which, alas, one seeks in vain through the enthusiast's fare that defines the Philadelphia Sabbath. The best offer heard being of bodily resurrection, which unhappily yet requires death as a precondition. He finds himself pretending Rebecca is there somewhere and listening. She has not visited since St. Helena. Mason cycles back to the island, a memory pilgrim with a well-marked itinerary map, to recapitulate exchanges in the ebony clearing, the empty walled patch, the lines at dawn before the Atlantic horizon. The next day he creeps out before Dixon is awake and goes to the site of last year's massacre by himself. He is not, as a rule, sensitive to the metaphysical remnants of evil. None but the grosser, that is, the Gothical, are apt to claim his attention. Yet here, in the soiled and strewn courtyard where it happened, ruthless to his surveillance and to his judgment, prays Mason. He feels like a nun before a shrine, as he later relates it to Dixon, who has in fact slept till well past noon as shifts and backshifts of bugs pass to and fro, inspecting his mortal envelope. Almost a smell, Mason quizzically, his face, it seems to Dixon, unusually white. Not the drains, nor the night's residency, I cannot explain, it quite torpedoed me. Sounds worth a visit. Acts have consequences, Dixon, they must. These louts believe all's right now. that they are free to get on with lives that to them are no doubt important, with no glimmer at all of the debt they have taken on. That is what I smelled. Leith water. One of the things the newly born forget is how terrible its taste and smell. In time, these people are able to forget everything. Be willing but to wait a little, and ye may gull them again and again, however ye wish, even unto their own dissolution. In America, as I apprehend, time is the true river that run round hell. They can't all be like that. Go and see, and damned if I'll share any more moments like that with you. As it suits thee. 'Tis how to suit myself, that's the puzzle. Quaker garb will send them into a warlike frenzy, whilst the red coat will strike them sullen and creeping, unable to be trusted at any scale. You might go as Harlequin, Mason replies, unsoothed, or Punch. Dixon has a fair idea of how little Mason cares for this continent. He himself has been trying to keep an open mind. Having been a Quaker all his life, his conscience early brought awake and not yet entirely fallen back to sleep, he now rides over to the jail as to his duty station, wearing a hat and coat borrowed of Mason. He is going as Mason. He sees where blows with rifle butts missed their marks and chipped the walls. He sees blood in corners never cleansed. Thankful he is no longer a child, else he might curse and weep, scattering his anger to no effect. Dixon now must be his own stern uncle, and smack himself upon the pate at any sign of unfocusing. What in the holy names are these people about? Not even the Dutchman at the Cape behaved this way. Is it something in this wilderness, something ancient, that waited for them and infected their souls when they came? Nothing he had brought to it of his nearest comparison, Raby with its thatched and benevolent romance of serfdom, had it all prepared him for the iron criminality of the Cape, the public executions and whippings, the opened flesh, the welling blood, the beefy, contented faces of those whites. Yet is Dixon certain, as the lightness he feels now, lightness premonitory of flying, that far worse happened here to these poor people, as the blood flew and the children cried, that at the end no one understood what they said as they died. I don't pray enough, Dixon sub-vocalizes. And I can't get upon my knees just now because too many are watching. Yet could I kneel, and would I pray? 'Twould be to ask, respectfully, that this be made right, that the murderers meet appropriate fates, that I be spared the awkwardness of seeking them out myself and slaying as many as I may before they overwhelm me. Much better if that be handled some other way, by someone a bit more credible. He feels no better for this outpouring. Returning to their rooms, he finds Mason reclined and smoking, looking up guiltily from a ragged instalment of The Ghastly Fop. "When were the thinking of leaving this miserable place?" "My saddlebags are packed. I merely take the time waiting you to satisfy myself that the shockingly underaged Protasia Waft has not yet succumbed before the wicked chemical assaults of the ghastly F." "Whom are we working for, Mason?" "I rather thought one day you would be the one to tell me." "My bags are never unpacked. May we do this without haste, avoiding all appearance of anxiety?" "I am cool," Mason replies. In the instant, both feel strongly drawn by the forks of brandy wine, Mrs. Harland's bean pies and rhubarb tarts, the goose down bedding, the friendliness of the milkmaids, the clement routine of observation. Gently they disengage from Lancaster. Each milestone passes like another rung of a ladder ascended. Behind, below, diminishing, they hear and presently lose a voicing disconsolate of regret at their flight.